Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Breaking the Huddle. We are live, and I am Joel Klatt. This show is sponsored by Dr. Pepper. At every home gate and tailgate, it is the one that fans crave, and we appreciate you joining us. By the way, go ahead and invite a friend right now. So get out there, invite your friends online, get them all in here, because we got some cool stuff for you. I'm going to give you my top 10 as I see it right now, and I'm also going to give you some insights into some of these rivalry games that are going to impact college football playoff race, conference championship game races, all of that. So again, right now, boom, 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 invite some friends in, and obviously throw those comments our way, because we love some good snark here at Breaking the Huddle. In fact, it might be our favorite thing of all time. Someone invite Andy Staples. Come on in. Okay, here we go. LSU is going to be my 10th team right now. Why? Because there's nobody else to put at number 10. Can I leave it blank? Sure. Let's move to 9. Speaking about LSU just really quickly, there really is just no other good option. They had some quality wins against teams that were vastly overrated, namely Miami and Auburn. Defensively, I think they're a really good unit with a singularly great player in White. Their offense is not very good at all. Last week, they beat up on a very much a lesser opponent, and I'm not all that convinced that they're going to beat Texas A&M, who snuck back into the committee's rankings. Shocked. Shocked I'm not shocked. Oh, boy. How do we... Why are they 7 in the committee's rankings? I believe that LSU is the safety net for Alabama right now. I believe that the committee is trying to create a scenario where Alabama goes regardless of if they win their conference championship, whether it's a loss in the Iron Bowl or a loss to Georgia in that SEC championship game. All of a sudden with LSU at 7, you can make an argument that, well, hey, they're clearly better in comparison with some one-loss teams that have won a conference championship because they shut out the 7th-ranked team in the country, versus, hey, they played a pretty poor offense in LSU who's rightly ranked at the 10 to 12 mark, and then all of a sudden you have to compare Alabama against a one-loss team that has won a conference championship, and then you get to that criteria where the committee is supposed to go, which is honor the conference championship. So with LSU at 7, you start to skirt that idea of, are they comparable or are they not comparable to a team if they were to lose and be a non-champ in that scenario. That's why I think the committee has LSU at 7. There's really not a ton there resume-wise outside of the Georgia win. Georgia turned the ball over 4 times. DeAndre Swift was not 100%. If they played tomorrow, I think Georgia wins by 14 or more. But hey, they won that game. I think you give them credit for that. And like I said, I even put them at 10, and I'll put them back up there. And I think that that's generous. I think that you could go with some other teams at that point. I really thought about West Virginia staying at 10 with what they've done even in just road losses. But I put LSU there. 7 is overrated, though. The committee is overranking LSU. Okay, so UCF is at number 9. So they move up for me. We're still hugging it out. This is like a bromance. It's borderline a bromance right now with UCF. They have been more and more impressive as the season has gone along, okay? They've got this winning streak that you can't ignore, even if it's a winning streak that I believe would not exist if they were a Power 5 team playing a real Power 5 schedule. You might think that I'm a hater for that and or elitist for that, but I just believe that to be the case. It is extraordinarily difficult to go undefeated in a Power 5 conference and win a national championship or go to the playoff. Just ask Alabama. I mean, think of how rare it's been for the greatest team over the last decade that maybe we've seen in the history of the sport. They've been the most dominant program that we've seen ever, and they've rarely done it. I think it's one undefeated season? We're going to get that. It doesn't happen very often, okay? Because of that, you've got to honor the wins and losses, but I don't think I can throw them up into the top 4 just because they're winning what is right now a schedule that the Sagarin ratings would put in the hundreds. It's the S&P rating system would put that strength of schedule into the 100s. Good win against Cincinnati. I love Mackenzie Milton. You're in the top 10. You're going to get another shot at a great New Year's game. And you never know. By the way, there is a path for UCF to make the college football playoff. And that's even me saying it. And I don't believe that they belong. But it's pretty clear. And I'm actually going to run that down once I get my entire top 10 on the board. So remind me to come back, throw some comments down. Once I get my top 10, I'm going to sit down or basically run down all the scenarios for all the teams to get into the college football playoff. At number 8 on my poll would be Ohio State. Ohio State is struggling mightily on the defensive side. What McFarland did to them, Anthony McFarland, running for almost 300 yards last week, and they struggled with a very specific formation and run concept. And that's dangerous because those coaches at Michigan are going to see that film and they're going to try to exploit that exact same thing. Here's what they did. It's called a single width formation, which means that they only have a tight end or a tackle on the short side of the field, and then they've got all of their wide receivers to one side. So they don't have wide receivers set outside on both sides, so it's a single width formation. Then what they did on a couple of those touchdown runs is that they had a tight end, a tackle, and a guard, and they switched the tackle over to create kind of a pseudo unbalanced, although it's not really unbalanced, where a tight end and a guard are just on one side, and then they ran the ball back on just a basic zone play to that short side of the field into the short side of their line. Well, those two runs, by the way, two of those first two touchdowns were the exact same play and the exact same formation. One happened with motion, one didn't, but it's ending up in the exact same formation. Ohio State blatantly misplayed it on the first play. They come inside on the motion, they miss their assignment, the corner gets pinned inside of that tight end, and McFarland just runs around the edge. Then on the next time, the corner does the right thing. He stays outside of that tight end on that short side of the field, and so they take the carry inside the tight end. So now it's more of an interior run, and the safety, Brendan White, who comes down, he's unblocked, and he just totally whiffs on the tackle. Boom, McFarland's gone for another touchdown. Exact same play, exact same formation. Two of the first 3 carries of the game go for over 70-yard touchdowns. That's a problem. You think Michigan's not going to run something very similar to that this week? Absolutely they will. I'll point it out to you on the broadcast when it happens there. Remember, noon Eastern on Fox. Gus, Ginny, and I will have the call of the game. Okay, Washington State's at number 7. Gardner Minshew, boy, I tell you what, 55 points at half? What are we doing with that stash? I got to tell you, they're playing with an absurd amount of confidence. I think that their defense is pretty good. This is a team that I believe is in the best position to win the Apple Cup than they have been in quite some time. We've seen them come into this game with aspirations of winning the division and potentially winning the conference before, and then they tend to falter. Now, Washington's a very good team. Remember now, Washington is only 4 snaps of the football away from being an undefeated. They had the poor option play inside the 5 against Auburn. They had the missed field goal against Oregon. They had the pick 6 happen in that third loss when they brought in their backup quarterback. They sat Jake Browning down all of a sudden, and the backup quarterback throws a pick 6, and now all of a sudden they're a 3-loss team. That's still a defense that is pretty damn good, in particular against the pass. So watch out. That's a bad matchup for Washington State, but they are in a good position. Their defense plays very well, much better than what Mike Leach has had in his past. They've taken what Alex Grinch did as a defensive coordinator in the past couple of seasons, and Tracy Claeys, now the new defensive coordinator, has done something very similar, a few tweaks here and there. Not many dominant players on the defensive side. They lose Hercules Maatafa from the defensive line, who was a terrific player up there, and they're still getting it done on that side of the football. So Washington State is at number 7. They've got a path to the playoff. Oklahoma is going to be at number 6. I moved them down to number 6 because I just can't have it with that defense. I can't do it anymore. The offense, and the only reason, and I've heard a lot of this, and Ohio State fans have a point. Ohio State fans have begun to create the narrative of, hey, why does OU get a pass for their bad defense and we don't get a pass for our bad defense, even though our defense is statistically better than Oklahoma's defense? Fair. I think that's fair. That's absolutely a fair point. The one thing that Ohio State doesn't have is the potent nature of what Oklahoma's offense is. Okay, Ohio State's offense is incredible. I love what Dwayne Haskins is able to do throwing the football. They've gotten their run game going in the last couple of weeks. In particular, last week, J.K. Dobbins runs for over 200 yards. But remember now, OU's got a player that's doing something that no other player in the history of the sport has done. He's averaging over 300 yards passing and over 60 yards rushing a game. That's pretty remarkable. This is a team that still has a winning percentage over 700 when they give up 45 points when Lincoln Riley is on their staff. What? I mean, that's silly stuff, right? That's silly stuff. By the way, going back, Bama only one undefeated season in the last 25 years, and that was 2009, their national championship season. So to the point about how hard it is to go undefeated in a Power 5 league, much tougher. Meanwhile, we've had undefeated seasons from Boise State and Utah. TCU has flirted with it. UCF did it last year. So again, much easier from the Group of 5 than it is in the Power 5. Thank you for that. Crack research behind the camera there. So to get back to what Kyler Murray is doing for Oklahoma, the offense is spectacular. That defense is horrendous. Buckle up in Morgantown. Buckle up. That one's going to be crazy. I mean crazy. I believe that game's on Friday, so I'm super pumped to watch that game as we're going to be getting ready for our game in the shoe, Michigan-Ohio State. I think OU's going to win. Would it shock you if West Virginia scored 55? Wouldn't shock me at all. Which means Kyler Murray, in the heat of the Heisman race, might have a showcase Friday after Thanksgiving to get into a 55-54 shootout on the road against another Heisman contender in Will Grier. Tell me Kyler Murray doesn't have a chance at the Heisman Trophy. Oh, that's right. He only doesn't have a chance in the minds of SEC writers. Good job, guys. Way to produce that narrative. You guys are really unbiased, aren't you? Way to look at college football as a whole. You guys are hacks. All right, Georgia is number 5. Georgia continues to get better. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Georgia beats Alabama. We have just all year just given, hey, Bama is the greatest team that we've ever seen. Bama is the greatest team that we've ever seen. Bama is the greatest team that we've ever seen. Guess what's all of a sudden happening? Health at the running back position mainly. DeAndre Swift is averaging 9.1 yards per carry in the last month. This dude looks incredible. I mean fast. He's got great moves. He's running with more vision. He's stronger than he was a year ago. Conversely, because he's got the running game back, what is he doing? He's playing much more efficient football on third down. They play a cupcake in UMass. Guess what? Justin Fields gets a lot more a run. I think he had 100 yards. This guy is very good. Now all of a sudden you're starting to see a Georgia team, maybe not the dominant defense under Roquan Smith that they had a year ago, but this is certainly a team that's going to be able to compete with Alabama. Remember now, LSU's defense, who I would put in the same category as Georgia, held Alabama to under 400 yards of offense and under 25 points. I'm telling you, there's a path for Georgia. I'm not going to favor them or pick them in the SEC championship game. I will not be shocked if that is one possession late, and if Georgia has the ball, who knows? Then they're one play away from winning. You could make the argument that they should have won the national championship last year. So that's why I've got Georgia at 5. I think that they're right there, and if they win that, they'll obviously be in the college football playoff for the second straight year. I've got Michigan at number 4. Michigan is a team that plays as good of complementary football as anybody out there. You talk about a balanced attack. You can say that Michigan protects their defense, and you can also say that Michigan's defense makes it easy for the offense to go out there and just ground and pound. That's what I mean by the complementary nature of what they've got going on. Did you know that Michigan's defense has seen under the 5th fewest snaps in college football, partly because the offense converts on third down? Shea Patterson's been very good running the football. The one area that all of a sudden they've shown weakness in is red zone offense. Last week they went into the red zone against Indiana 8 times. They only got 1 touchdown out of that. They had to settle for 6 field goals. They ran out the half and some poor clock management on the other drive. They have the new kicker, Jake Moody. I expect him to be the kicker as they move into that game with Ohio State, and that defense is going to have to play their best game. Rest assured, Michigan fans, this is the best offense this defense has seen all year by a wide margin. Okay, so I'm just saying, don't be shocked if Ohio State puts up some points and puts up some yards. What you would then, if I'm a Michigan fan, you're going to have to hang your hat on the fact that Ohio State's defense is not very good and Michigan's offense is substantially better than people give it credit for. That's a top 30 scoring offense. They had 500 yards of offense last week. If they punch it in a couple of times, that's a 45-20 game against Indiana, and it's going to feel very similar to what they did against Wisconsin or Penn State or any of those other teams. Okay, so that's what I've got for Michigan right now. That's a really good team, and they control their own destiny, at least in my estimation. All right, Notre Dame is at number 3, and Notre Dame continues to go out there and actually get better. How about Syracuse comes in, averaging 44 points per game, and they basically have to kick a last-second field goal in order to not get shut out. 2 thoughts. 1, excellent job, Notre Dame. I mean, Jerry Tillery and that defense, I've been telling you all year, I think that defense is a very good defense. Second thought, I have told you all year that Syracuse is vastly overrated. The entire ACC is vastly overrated outside of Clemson. That actually scares me a little bit for Notre Dame going into a potential playoff. I don't think Notre Dame is in the caliber of Clemson. I really don't. Clemson is just too balanced. They're too good on defense. But we'll see. With Ian Book, you never know. And Ian Book has been very good throwing the football. They're balanced on offense, speaking of the Irish. Dexter Williams has done a really nice job since he was imparted into this lineup, or input into this lineup. He's in the top 10 in college football since he came back in rushing yards per game at over 110. And the defense continues to play well. So that was a heck of an effort against Syracuse. I don't think Syracuse was ready to be in a game in which everyone thought that they were going to play well, that they were supposed to be a ranked team. They've played this underdog role really well for Dino Babers, and offensively they've gotten out on some bad defenses, and it came all to a head against Notre Dame last week in Yankee Stadium. And number 2, everyone knows where I'm going with number 2 and number 1. So it's Clemson and it's Alabama. Okay, so real quick on Clemson before we get out of here. Clemson is as balanced as anybody. They fall into the same category as Michigan. They're a top 10 scoring offense, top 10 scoring defense. Their defensive front 4 is, I still think, the best in college football. Trevor Lawrence, by the way, his development might be the most overlooked part of the college football season. And the reason is we're probably headed, to an Alabama-Clemson championship game, national championship game. Probably. What does it take to beat Alabama? Great quarterback play. That's just, I mean, you look at all the teams that have actually beaten Alabama, you got to have a quarterback that is superior to the players on the field around him. Trevor Lawrence is starting to play that way. Remember, Clemson is a dominant rushing team. This guy is having a really good year for a true freshman, and he's getting all of these reps, getting himself all mature and ready to go for when they need him the most. And remember, he's the quarterback for a specific reason. It was Hunter Bryant that lost this job, not this year, but last year in the semifinal. Dabo Swinney was looking for another option, partly because of the way that Clemson played in the semifinal against Bama a year ago. They could not move the football because Bryant could not throw it. Swinney had just seen in the 2 previous seasons his quarterback go out there and tear Alabama apart, and that was the reason that they were in those games. They won one, a national championship, and lost the other. Deshaun Watson was the reason through the air, and he also did some things with his legs, but through the air, why Clemson had a chance. So what did Dabo realize he had to do? He had to move away from a guy that was mostly a running threat to a guy that's mostly a passing threat and maybe can get loose a couple of times during the game. Who is that? Trevor Lawrence. This is all a blueprint deal. It's not, who's better? No. It's a blueprint for one team, Alabama. That's why Trevor Lawrence is your starting quarterback at Clemson. And Alabama is number 1 because they've been the best team of the year all season long. I do believe they should be held accountable for being tied with the Citadel 10-10 at half. That's pretty poor. Just to give you a sense of how poor, the last time that a top 10 team was tied or trailing at halftime with an FCS opponent was when App State beat Michigan in 2007. So that's 11 years of context to say that you should not be in that position if you are historically great. I think Alabama's a wonderful team. I don't think they've played their best football over the last month. That could come back to haunt them when it comes to a matchup with Georgia in the SEC championship game. So that's how I have my top 10 right now. It looks awful similar to what we've got going on in the AP and the committee, outside of the fact that LSU at 7 is pretty absurd. I mean, have some respect for yourself, committee. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. LSU at 7, and the 3 teams behind them have combined the same number of losses as LSU has. Give me a break. Like, what are we doing? You know, stop valuing Miami. I understand they're patient zero, and I called you out for it, but it just makes me frustrated. You know, that this league can go and play the schedule that they did last week And Kentucky can struggle with Middle Tennessee and still be rated above Washington. LSU can be at 7 with 2 losses, ahead of 3 teams that combined have 2 losses as well. Like, we see it, we get it. And it's always the same excuse. Well, we think that this team, give me a break. Like, can we stop it? Okay, scenarios to get in. You don't have a chance, you're out. Okay, scenarios to get in. For UCF, I do think that the committee might value them ahead of Ohio State regardless of what happens with Ohio State and Michigan and in the Big Ten. But sake of argument, let's say that in this scenario, Ohio State is being valued higher. So here's what would have to happen. UCF, you want Alabama to win so that Georgia would have 2 losses. I believe that removes them from contention. You want Clemson to win. You want Notre Dame to win. You want Ohio State to beat Michigan, knocking them out, giving them a second loss. You want Northwestern to then beat Ohio State. You want Washington to beat Washington State, and then either West Virginia or whoever OU plays in the Big 12 title game gives them a second loss, and guess who's in? Guess who's dancing? Come on, baby, the Golden Knights. I know you hate that, right? Noogie on the head. We're buddies now. It's UCF. That's how you get in, okay? Let's move to Ohio State. Ohio State, I don't know if they would get the benefit of the doubt over Washington State if they won out. So let's say Washington has to win or Utah has to beat Washington State in the Pac-12 championship game. They need a second loss. Same scenario here with Oklahoma, either a West Virginia loss and or a loss in the Big 12 title game. Ohio State, you want Bama to beat Georgia, you want Clemson to win, you want Notre Dame to win, and then you would be handling Michigan yourself and you would have to beat Northwestern. That's your path. That's not that far-fetched. They're only a 3-point favorite at home. Do you really think they're going to go on the road to Morgantown and then have to play a team in Texas probably for a second time? And I'm favoring Alabama over Georgia. So basically, I'm telling you, like, you kind of control your own. I mean, do you really think these 2 teams are going to win out? Remember, Mike Leach has never won a division championship nor a conference championship. And that's a really tough ask at Morgantown and then in the Big 12 championship game. Now, it might happen, and in that case, I think those teams would go ahead of you, but I think there's a really clear path for Ohio State. For Washington State, it's even more simple. You want Alabama to win. Oklahoma loses in one of those 2 weeks. You beat Washington, you beat Utah, and then what you need, I think, is Ohio State to beat Michigan or Northwestern, but let's be honest, I think it's an easier ask to Ohio State at home beating Michigan. At that point, Washington State, I think you've got a path to the playoff. OU, it's even smaller than that. You need Ohio State to beat Michigan, Alabama to beat Georgia, and OU, you win out. OU's back dancing for the 3rd time in 4 years. And for Georgia, you're winning in. Michigan, I believe you're winning in. Let's sit at that scenario for 1 second, and this is where I'm going to close things out. There has been a lot of conversation about Alabama being in regardless of if they lose another game. I already talked a little bit about the safety net that the committee is using with LSU at 7, but hear me out on this. I believe that if Michigan wins out, they would go even over an Alabama team that had 1 loss and was a non-champion for 2 main important reasons, very important reasons. Alabama last year was included over Ohio State in part because the committee skirted that comparison, the direct comparison of like teams. How were they able to do that? Ohio State had 2 losses, not 1. Alabama only had 1. So therefore, they were able to say they are different. We don't have to go to the conference championship tiebreaker. Therefore, Alabama is just a better team. I don't think they can do that if both Alabama and Michigan are both 12-1. Right? I mean, even the loss for Michigan would, in theory, look better because it was in a true road game and they would be on a 12-game winning streak at the time, not a 1-game losing streak, losing in a neutral site as a favored team. So there's that. Then there's this feather in the cap for Michigan. Did you know if Michigan wins this week and next week, they're the first team in college football history to go through a 9-game conference slate in the Power 5 and win a conference championship game and be 10-0 in that situation? I think that's an important factor, a really important factor, in particular when you're talking about politically the commissioners pushing the committee to honor the conference championships more and more and more. I think Michigan gets the benefit of the doubt over an Alabama if they're both 12-1 and Bama's a non-champ and Michigan is a champ. A lot of people would say, yeah, of course you would have that take, but I think that that's very reasonable to think about Alabama as a non-champ missing the college football playoff. A lot of people would throw a fit about that, but that's the way I feel. All right, so we're going to have a lot more next week, obviously, as we head into the conference championship games. I hope you enjoyed the show. We had gotten to a lot of stuff there. This has been Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt, and this has been sponsored by Dr. Pepper at every home gate and tailgate. It is the one that fans crave. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy Thanksgiving, folks. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.